All right, everyone. So thank you for joining Politicking this evening. Thank you for joining Candidates and Culture, the Miami edition, hosted by Politicking the App. Politicking is a social political mobile platform that allows millennials to engage with politics on a state, local, and federal level. We're particularly interested in making sure that communities that have been historically disengaged from the conversation become engaged, interested, and invested in politics. So that includes anyone from Black and Brown communities, immigrant communities, LGBTQ community, and so on and so forth. We decided to bring it down to Miami for this particular panel because that's where I'm from, but also because Miami is the melting pot of the South. I think a lot of people don't understand the historical significance of Miami, and there's just so much that goes on culturally and civically down in the South. And so I think it's really time for us to take a deeper look at Miami politics and how it governs most of the greater South Florida area. And so we'll be hearing from Miami and Broward County candidates, as well as cultural shapers and thought leaders within the community this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jordan to tell us a little bit more about what we've been doing with politicking this last couple months.
Certainly, we're excited to be in Miami this evening virtually. I might not be as excited actually not to be there in person. I'm in Indiana now, but it's a pleasure to meet many of you, and it will, I'm sure, be an absolute treat to hear from you all about your candidacies or your work in civic participation in the area. And of course, you know, what you're looking forward to for the upcoming election cycle. I'm really here to provide a couple of reminders. And one, it's that election day in you all's areas Tuesday. Now I'll let you all talk a little bit more about the times and the important information that people know to participate. But I want to remind everybody that it is important to participate in the state and local cycles, if not more than it is to participate obviously in the federal election. I'll also remind you that Politicking has started a crowdfunding campaign, and some of the candidates might let you know how to support their campaigns financially, but we'd like to implore you to support us. We do these events really, you know, we don't necessarily charge, but there's always a cost. And though everyone might not see it, you know, it really is not cheap to provide a comprehensive, accessible election information platform. The last thing I'll remind you of is that I am the timekeeper, and so we may or may not be close friends throughout the duration of this program. Hopefully we can stay in touch. And as a matter of fact, I'll leave these comments or leave a couple of minutes on the floor so that we can get started with the formal discussion. But once again, I want to urge you all to download Politicking if you already haven't, donate to our crowdfunding campaign, and of course, participate in the upcoming elections. Take the state and local offices seriously, because these are the folks that dictate our day-to-day lives.
Thank you so much for that, Jordan. And please be respectful of Jordan's time. We're going to try to be respectful of yours and try to keep us on board tonight. So that being said, without any further ado, we're going to introduce Marlon Hill to tell us a bit more about himself, who's running for Miami-Dade County Commissioner of District 9. So Marlon, to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Marlon Hill?
Who is Marlon Hill, the Slim Shady? Well, good evening to everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Politicking the App. And as Jordan said, make sure that you download the app. That's a form of engagement and democratization. You got to put your footprint on investing in your own engagement. Well, I'm Marlon Hill. I'm a young kid from Jamaica. I arrived here when I was 14 years old in South Miami Heights, and jumped right into high school and tried to adjust to these United States of America. And the high school that I went to, Miami Southridge, was so welcoming and inviting to allow me to transition into the United States. And they had such a great support system. I went off to school at Florida State University and studied international business and finance and minored in Spanish. Went off to school in Costa Rica for a year, came back. Hurricane Andrew happened, so I stayed in Tallahassee for law school. After law school, I returned back home to Miami as a young lawyer, got very involved practicing law, and also getting involved in my community, matching my passions with my talents, whether it was helping new immigrants to adjust to the United States, counseling small businesses and nonprofits, working with the philanthropic community, I would find a way to tide my talent and tide my passion. 25 years fast forward, I've stepped into the space of a term limited seat here in County Commission District 9 in Miami-Dade County, one of 13 County Commission districts, to expand on what I've been doing as a young leader, growing up here in Miami and running for the County Commission. And I'm hoping to make the residents of South Miami-Dade County more connected and not neglected as they've been over the many years in terms of getting their fair share of resources and services that they need in Miami-Dade County. So I'm hoping that the Politicking family will call your friends and family in Miami-Dade County and let them know that a new day is approaching with the election that's coming up on Tuesday.
Thank you so much for that, Marlon. And I'm excited to hear more about what you're doing within Miami-Dade County. So I'll ask you the first question. What is your current community and civic involvement?
Well, currently right now, you know, I still practice law as a business lawyer. I represent primarily creative people and organizations as an entertainment, arts, and business attorney. So I like to represent family-owned companies, entrepreneurs, innovators, creators. That's what I do in terms of my full-time job. When I'm not practicing law, I'm certainly, you know, doing my part in terms of advancing the interests of the community, helping immigrants to apply for their citizenship. I think I've completed thousands of applications. I am counseling small businesses and nonprofits so that they can magnify the impact that they have on the community. So whether it's serving on the board recently with the Miami Foundation or working with organizations like Catholic Legal Services or the Bar Associations, these are some of the things that I've been doing that matches up with who I am as a lawyer and who I am as a person in this community. And recently, the most significant project that I worked on was we helped to convert 2 classrooms into a real 21st century courtroom in Brownsville Middle School so that kids could see themselves in shaping the legal system as opposed to being a part of the legal system. You know, and this is a model that, you know, that we're hoping that could be replicated through Miami-Dade County, where our kids become leaders and professionals in a legal system that has given them the short end of the stick. So proactively, that's one project that recently we completed a few years back, and it's something that we're trying to magnify and to show the kids that they have potential and to really change the equation to see kids as assets as opposed to liabilities. And when you see things as assets on a balance sheet, you have a whole new perspective on the world as to what you should be investing in.
That's absolutely right, Marlon. And I think you're doing the right thing by investing in the future, which is the youth. So to echo that, I'll ask the next question, which is, which issues do you seek to advance through your office or position?
So here in Miami-Dade County, we are going to be electing a new mayor and also new county commissioners in the odd number seats, right? It's a watershed moment in the transition in leadership here in Miami-Dade County. And a county commissioner is responsible for significant things in terms of the governance of Miami-Dade County, right? A county commissioner is going to be overseeing a $9 billion budget. A county commissioner is going to be responsible for setting policy or passing laws related to the Miami-Dade Police Department, the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, the airport, the seaport, support for small businesses, the housing affordability crisis, addressing that issue, trying to resolve our traffic congestion where we have built our way across Miami-Dade County without having a transportation infrastructure, looking at our environment where we can no longer see dead fish flowing up to the shores as we speak right now in Biscayne Bay. A county commission is going to be responsible for many issues like this. For me, in Miami-Dade County, in South Miami-Dade in particular, I want to see more people working in South Dade as opposed to having to drive 2 hours away to work. So we really need to look at having an economic vision for South Miami-Dade County because it's geographically miles and miles away from the center of downtown Miami. We also need to be addressing our housing affordability crisis. You know, we have a lot of young people that move away from Miami-Dade County. I'm not speaking about anyone in particular, but it could be the host of this program where her talent needs to be here in Miami as opposed to be somewhere else, right?
That's right.
You need to be able to afford to be able to live here with housing and to be able to travel around Miami. And it's very restrictive in our ability to do that with regards to transportation and housing. And there's one issue that particularly troubles me is the state of young Black boys in Miami. You know, they're more endangered than non-young Black boys. And this is something that the entire community should care about, whether or not they get intertwined with the criminal element of the streets. Because I see them as assets, and that's one of the reasons why I serve as a mentor and a support system for other young Black boys and men, because they need to see us, they need to hear us, they need to emulate us, they need to know that we got their back. And the rest of the community, if they saw them as assets or saw us as assets, because I'm still part of that generation growing up in Miami, then we can make a bigger contribution if they invest in us. And what does that look like? Having more programs where they can demonstrate their talents for music production or the arts or sciences, things that they are interested in, and not just sports on the football field, but other things that we can invest in them as assets. And I want to see more programs like that as a county commissioner, where we can invest in the best of our communities. Those are some of the top line things that I care about coming in as a county commissioner. And I believe that we need a new opportunity for how we engage with each other. This COVID-19 period has taught us that we need to connect with each other in a more meaningful way. And we're away from us physically, but we're here connecting virtually. And it has taught us new skills and new ways to communicate and new ways to engage. And we need to take advantage of those tools so that we can have a more compassion and empathy on communities that some people don't even drive through. You know, some people don't drive through West Perrine. Some people don't drive through Florida City or Liberty City. And these are communities that I see as assets that we need to change the equation as to how these communities are engaged with each other and become part of the greater community.
100%, Marlon, 100%. I'm going to take just a second. So Jordan, don't take this out of Marlon's time, but when you were talking about some of those cities, I wanted to take the time to recommend this book to all of the people that live in Miami, or if you don't live in Miami. It's called Black Miami in the 20th Century. It's by Marvin Dunn. This book really helped me to have a comprehensive understanding of what was going on in Black and Brown Miami and the gentrification from then to now, to the Caribbean communities that came to Miami. And it was really a fascinating story, but more importantly, it helped connect the dots to where we are currently in Miami. And thank you for bringing that up, Marlon.
Absolutely, and that's a very important point, you know, with the nomination of Kamala Harris, where we look at who is a Black woman or where her background is. Here in Miami, we have so many layers of Black excellence. We have so many layers of who it is a Black person. You have to be very careful in Miami by prejudging someone by virtue of their last name or their accent or where they live, because that may not tell you the full story, right? And when you don't tell someone's full story, you deny them the full inclusion into the room, right? And this is something that we have to do a better job, especially as the Black community continues to grow across the country, whether someone is from Somalia or Sudan or from Haiti or Ethiopia or from Brazil or even Cuba. These are issues that when a person's melanin in their skin becomes prejudged, you need to pause for 10 seconds in Miami, because you get yourself into a lot of trouble. Even though Black people experience some of the same challenges, how they come to those experiences may determine which state they're from. Is their family multi-generational Bahamian? Are they coming from another country when they were younger? Is English their second language? All these things impact the issues of politics and culture and elections. And going into this election that we're coming up in the fall, you're going to see a new Black quotient, I believe, that you can't put Black people into little boxes and expect things to be the same anymore, because that's changing across America, including right here in Miami.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Marlon, for sharing with us.
Thank you so much, Marlon. So that being said, we're going to move on to Wanda Tima. Wanda is the founder of Union Suite and was raised in Turks and Caicos, but is of Haitian descent. She later moved to South Florida, and she's the oldest of four. She's done a tremendous job with Union Suite, and is a major reason why the Haitian community is so interconnected, not only in the South Florida region, but throughout the United States and beyond. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Wanda.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to be here tonight speaking amongst, the rest of the panel.
Absolutely, Wanda. So I'm gonna start with the same question that I asked Marlon. Who is Wanda? I gave a short introduction, but we wanna know more. Tell me about who is Wanda and how did you get started doing what you're doing?
So pretty much like you said, grew up in Turks and Caicos and I moved to South Florida. A lot of people think I live and I'm from Miami because I'm there so much, but I'm from Broward, grew up in Fort Lauderdale, and I moved to Fort Lauderdale when I was pretty much in middle school, and it was not a great experience moving from Turks and Caicos and being Haitian in Broward at that time. Like my first few days at school, I was watching Haitian kids get beat up and taunted. Simply for being Haitian and coming from a place where I had never experienced things like that. Like I didn't get it. But I also was part of the Haitian community to where I was Haitian mainly by the name. My family didn't really grow up too much speaking Creole, and we were very disconnected from the rest of the Haitian community. So I pretty much went through, high school years and stuff, like feeling very disconnected and not feeling part of this community that of course I'm from. And I wanted, when I wanted to find myself, I wanted to connect, I wanted to know more, I wanted to go to Haiti, I wanted to understand this part of who I was. And when I started going online and trying to find information, I couldn't find any of the stuff that now that we have on Union Suite. Couldn't find other Haitians. All you saw on Google was about poverty and just negative stories about Haiti. And I started doing my own research. And the more I learned about Haiti, the more I learned about Haitians and the culture, I couldn't understand why some of even the historical facts about what Haiti had contributed to the world was not out there as much as, it was. And I wanted to be that voice. I wanted to be the shift, and I wanted to change that narrative. So I started, Union Suite after I graduated college, as literally it was supposed to just be a blog to share that information so other Haitians that grew up like me could find a way to feel connected and learn, so we don't have to go through seeing other young Haitian kids grow up massively disconnected, to their people. And it pretty much blew up. Like it went from a little blog to literally being my full-time job. So I turned it into a full digital media company, where now pretty much what we do is, like you said, connect the Haitian community, connect Haitians, Haitian diasporas all around the world.
Absolutely, Wanda. And I want to personally, as a Haitian American myself, thank you for that, because it has done such a fabulous job of connecting. Just a little background story. Wanda has this great event she does usually every year. It's a charity event, it's a bowling event, and I think I'm pretty good at bowling. And so I went one year to volunteer actually, and it was amazing because a lot of the celebrities and musicians out of South Florida are actually Haitian, and a lot of people don't know that. And it really was a beautiful unison between that celebrity community and everyday people. And it really was the first event where I saw people just really interacting with one another. There was nobody acting stuck up there. There was no security. It was really just people talking to people. And I always admired the fact that you were able to get people to connect on that level. And so thank you for making sure that happened, and facilitating that through Union Suite, because I think it's extremely important.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that being said, what kind of issues do you guys focus on with Union Suite? With your current position as the founder of Union Suite, what are the types of issues that you guys focus on?
So our goal is pretty much to highlight what I like to say is the best of the Haitian community when it comes to the people and culture and everything else. However, there are a lot of other things that go on in the community that we normally don't have, enough information. And like Marlon just said, pretty much a lot of times our story is not told correctly. Our story is not told by us. Our story is told by people that have their idea of what it means to be Haitian or think they know what we want and what we represent and what rights we want. So aside from the traditional everyday beautiful things we focus on, we try to be in the communities as much as possible. And I'm in South Florida, so of course everything that goes on South Florida I like to be a part of, from community engagement, like especially being in Little Haiti Cultural Center, highlighting the work that's being done there and the community leaders there. But because we're pretty much global at this point, we try to focus on all of these things in various cities. So depending on, for example, the census is going on. We know that's an important topic in the Haitian community. So however we need to now, create a space for where we can amplify those messages, and that's what we do. So while we're not like a radio station, we're not a print magazine or print paper, we make sure we have the same information and we're connected to Haitians in the community to where we're sharing that. So everything from census, what's going on right now in politics, who's running, what Haitian Americans are running, what are they running for? And even with, a lot of little bits of what's going on in Haiti as well. So the goal for us is to always make sure, yes, we want to create a space that's very entertaining and, feel fun, but at the same time, we stick important messages in there to where we keep people engaged, to where just like we can have you laughing or you can be excited to learn about your favorite basketball player in 1 minute, right in between that content, we're going to drop, a really strong message about something that's going on in South Florida. There's a protest going on. And here's, why you need to be there. So pretty much, like I said, however we can amplify what's already going on in the community or creating a bridge to help others, that's what we do.
That's amazing, Wanda. And again, I can't understate the importance of your work because, I want actually all the Haitians in the chat, please drop your flags now immediately. But I really remember myself growing up in South Florida as like a young Haitian kid, and it wasn't always cool to be Haitian. Now it is. But it wasn't always cool to be Haitian, and there was a lot of prejudice that was associated with being Haitian, especially being a darker skinned Haitian. And I think that that is something, as Haitian women, we probably struggled with in our youth. And I think having a platform like Union Suite that showcases Haiti's beauty and the beauty of the diaspora of Haiti's community is so fundamentally important, because it helps people to understand that, hey, there's Haitians everywhere. Every single state, every single country. It helps people to understand. It's funny, I have non-Haitian friends sending me stuff off of Union Suite, and they'll send me stuff and they're like, hey, these people are Haitian. They don't understand that there's a large Lebanese and Arabic population in Haiti. And so just teaching them about that as well, learning about the music, learning about the food, learning that Babancourt rum was named one of the top 10 rums by Forbes. So there's so much information that I think people can procure for that. Whether you're Haitian or not, y'all better check out Union Suite. Honestly, I go there at least once a day. And so aside from my soapbox about that, I'm gonna ask you the last question is, why is it important that voters participate in the upcoming election?
Because our voices matter as well. A lot of what Marlon was saying, we need to be at the forefront of the communication of what's going on, in our communities. Like for me, as the Haitian person growing up in South Florida, a lot of times I never really understood what was going on, in politics. I didn't really understand like the different houses and who to vote for and everything else. And now we have all this information at our disposal where we can learn these things and we can be part of connecting people to make sure they understand why they should vote. A lot of times people see we're just going off what's being said on TV or what's being said by this person or this person. And it's really important that we are aware what's going on and knowing that who we vote for, not just for president in our local communities, matters for our future. It matters for funding. It matters for some of the big things that's going on right now in the Haitian community. Immigration is so huge. And there's a lot of stuff going on with immigration that even the Haitian community is not aware of. And it's so important on who we vote for, because we need some of these changes being made for immigration. Haitians are being deported every 2 weeks. You don't see that on the news every day. You don't see that at the forefront of CNN and everything else, but it's happening. And there needs to be more voices, assisting in that. And people need to hear how they're deporting you know, Haitian. So we need to vote to make sure some of these things change. TPS, another thing that's at the forefront of the Haitian community. We need to vote. Like, you know, we can protest and protest and protest, but it also matters who we vote for and who we put in these positions to make sure they take care of these things for us, you know, when they are in office.
Absolutely. Y'all look up ICE, look up TPS, look up these acronyms, learn them, familiarize yourself with the jargon, because for Haitian Americans, seeing the photos that we saw of young Latinx children being locked up at the borders, that wasn't our first time seeing that. That has been happening in the Haitian community for years, for decades, actually. Look up wet foot, dry foot policy, which was passed back in Clinton's era, and you'll see that this sort of prejudice against the Haitian people has been occurring for decades. And so it's extremely important that we stay aware that these happenings are continuing to occur even in the year 2020. And so Wanda,
No, and another last thing I wanted to say is when you think about how we're positioned many times when it comes to the presidential election, the last couple elections we've been last. You know, we're the last, you know, to be thought about. You had, you know, President Trump coming in 2016 and Low Haiti making all these promises towards the end, you know, of the process. Then you had Hillary Clinton also coming at the end. So even for us in the Haitian community, it's so important that we make sure people don't forget how important it is to include us, not last minute us and just come to Low Haiti and throw a bunch of messages and promise us things. And then 2-3 years later, tell us that our country is an S-hole country. So we definitely make sure we're not forgotten in any of this process.
Thank you, Wanda. You've absolutely educated us, and I think a lot of pressing policies that we should all just wake up and read up on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Wanda. We're going to bring Nancy on next. Nancy, are you with us?
I am with you. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to give them a short little bio, but then I'm going to let you do your thing. Nancy is a resident of Coral Springs, has been for over 20 years, graduated from Coral Springs Charter, and has earned her Bachelor's of Science from FAMU. Okay, you're a Rattler.
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, we're Bison, but we won't hold it against you.
Yeah, this is a Howard chat.
It is. That's all right. We're family. HBCU love right now. We're pushing that. And so Nancy got her master's from Johns Hopkins. So I see you're also familiar with the DMV area, and is currently serving on the Broward County Commission on the Status of Women in the City of Coral Springs Neighborhood Environmental Committee and Customer Involved in Government Committee. And so Nancy is super involved in the Coral Springs community, super involved in Broward, super involved in the Haitian American community, which is how we met. And so with no further ado, Nancy Metayer, I would love to hear a little bit more about you.
Wow, thank you again, and good evening, everyone. Thank you, Politicking App, for having me. Again, y'all go ahead and support them. Drop those coins. And I definitely have love for the Bison, being that Kamala has been picked for the VP nomination. So a little bit about myself. I'm a scientist. Not most people know this. I'm an environmental scientist, to be exact, with a background in policy. A lot of the work that I do is meshing data and policy and bringing it together and making sure that our legislators are making the right decisions based on science. But as we've been seeing as of lately, our expertise have been ignored. But I've also organized internationally and domestically. I've organized in Haiti, where I've worked closely with NGOs, the Haitian government, as well as the American government, to provide public health services to Haitian residents, as well as really educating folks on access to clean water and addressing environmental issues. Domestically, I've done work, again, as an organizer around food justice in the 3311 corridor, the Cis-Trunk corridor for Lauderdale area around food justice. Then went on to do climate justice work with the New Florida Majority, where I know some of the folks here on this chat. And then now I lead or help support policies or resolutions around gender justice and reproductive justice rights throughout the state of Florida.
That's amazing, Nancy. And so I have a canned question here, but I actually have a question I want to ask you. So I feel like when I met you last time, I remember you were running for a different office, and I want you to kind of speak to the type of perseverance that it takes to, you know, run for office again. I think a lot of people think running for office is a hit it and quit it type situation. You run once, you're in. And life is just glorious. But tell me about your journey in terms of what you've run for in the past and what kind of inspired you to continue pushing along on that journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my decision to run for office was simply because I didn't like my choices in my city, right? I didn't think that the leadership reflected how the city was growing. So I jumped in a special election in March 2019. It was a 60-day race, and everyone said that I was crazy for doing it. I came in second with 10% less of the winner. And so people are like, what's 10%? Well, a little less than 600 points. So if 600 people decided to vote, I would have been the mayor of Coral Springs, the first Haitian American, the first Black woman, the youngest mayor of the city. And then fast forward to November, and I still thought that my city did not reflect the people that lived in that city, right? And I said, it's time for me to step up as a leader. So I decided to jump into the ring again. And now I'm running for an open seat, Coral Springs Commissioner Seat 3, which is a 4-year term. And it's not a special election, and think that this would be a great way for me not only to serve as representation, but also move our city forward in a way that is innovative. Our city is known for being a suburb, really west of Broward. You go there, they're like old people go there to retire, but our city is actually changing, and younger folks are moving in, younger professionals, and really want that to be reflected on the dais.
You know, Nancy, honestly, your story is inspiring because I personally was moved when I was like, that's really dope that Nancy's running again, because I think a lot of people don't understand that sometimes it takes a couple of tries to actually be successful. And so I'm definitely wishing you the best of luck in that race. And even though those are different positions, I think your commitment to your city of Coral Springs is evident. And I really do hope that the voters can see that on Tuesday and even now, because early voting is open, guys. So y'all go ahead and get to the polls.
Well, actually, the great thing about my race is November 3rd. So
okay.
I'm not in the primary. I'm a little jealous for the folks who are on here who end their mission on the 18th, but I'm rooting for you. And on the primaries, it's definitely important.
Well, you heard Nancy, guys. November 3rd is going to be her date. So if you guys are Coral Springs voters or Broward County voters, please look out for her on the ballot. And so, Nancy, you've told us that you're basically a champion for environmental issues. And I want to know, why is it important that voters participate in these upcoming elections, whether it be Tuesday's primary or whether it be the November 3rd election? Why is it important that voters participate?
Because we are literally fighting for every aspect of our lives, from the right to breathe. And I'm not saying that to be funny, but like under the Trump administration, we have seen a lot of lax in the EPA regulations. And as we know, environmental disparities impact communities of color the most, right? The right to ensure that our voting, we're not facing voter suppression. So as you saw earlier last week, our administration tried to basically push back the November election, which we all know can't happen. And then on a local level, your local leaders or your local representers actually impact every day of your lives, whether that is the potholes on your street, whether it's inserting a traffic light in a really busy traffic area, whether it's your water treatment facilities to ensure that you have fresh drinking water, to internet. And so it's very important not only to for you to engage on a federal level, but also engage on a local level as well. We have great state representatives here that bring back the money into our communities. We have great but county commissioners who ensures that we are abiding by certain guidelines and our tax dollars are being afforded for and accounted for. And then we have our city legislators who ensure that they are really advocating on every level for us to ensure that we are getting what we need to be able to thrive in our communities.
That's amazing, Nancy. I think it's extremely important. One last question I have, I think we have 1 or 2 minutes left, is with this presidential election, I think one of the things that stuck out to me about the Trump presidency was that we actually, as a country, withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, which was a tremendous slap in the face to any environmental policy advocates. And so with this upcoming election, do you think that that's something that the United States is going to be interested in getting re-involved in if we see the success of Biden and Harris in November?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely on the Biden-Harris ticket that climate change or environmental issues are at the forefront. Biden has already appointed AOC as one of the steering committee members to really lead the climate task force on a national level. So what does that mean? Maybe we'll be able to implement the Green New Deal. And when we talk about the Green New Deal, a lot of folks don't understand what that means. That means equitable and just transition to renewable energies, right? To really divesting in fossil fuels, to really empower our communities to have fresh air, to have better drinking water, to not have another Flint, Michigan happen in South Florida, happen and throughout the world, throughout our nation, right? So it's important that when we vote in the presidential election, we hold these individuals accountable and really pay attention who they're putting in place to lead some of these platforms or these issues, and making sure they're knowledgeable and really care about these issues because our communities have a lot at stake.
Thank you, Nancy. You seem like an excellent example of a public servant, so thank you for sharing your comments. And I actually, Wankuni, I know you're going to move on to the next person, but at some point, can we volunteer you or someone else to remind everybody about the early voting dates and information?
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nancy, please.
You want me to go? Okay. So right now, as you know, we're in early voting. I can speak to Broward. Broward started their early voting last week. Our last day for early voting is on the 16th. We get a day's rest on the 17th, and then the primary election is on the 18th. I just want to remind everyone, if you are voting by mail, you are able to drop it off at early election sites, but on the day of elections, you are unable to do that. So you have to go to your designated precincts, and if you do decide to vote by mail, bring it to Laguerre to the SOE and drop it off there. If you can't, if you don't want to go to your precinct site.
That's very helpful.
And for Miami-Dade County, early voting continues tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And like Broward County, there's a day off on Monday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You must go to your designated precinct. Those people that are sitting on vote by mail right now in Broward County and Dade County, literally tens and thousands of people. Go ahead, do your homework right now, call a friend like the game show and say, hey, I need help filling out my ballot, and take it into any early voting location. It's very important that you do that and take a photo ID, and please sign the envelope on the outside. You must sign the vote by mail envelope, and the signature must match your signature on your voter registration card.
Thank you so much, Marlon. Thank you so much, Nancy. You guys heard from Broward and Miami. So South Florida, we have you guys covered. And so that being said, I want to bring Jessica Laguerre Hilton on, who is running for election to the Florida House of Representatives to represent District 117. With no further ado, Jessica, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Like she mentioned, my name is Jessica Laguerre Hilton, and I'm a candidate for the Florida House of Representatives for District 117. Growing up in the South Dade area, I've often seen leaders take more than they give. And for me, deciding to run for office was an opportunity to really give back to the community that has given so much to me. This election, as you've heard from so many others, is extremely critical. And as it pertains to the South Dade area, I knew about 10 years ago when deciding really what the next few years of my life was going to be and what I would dedicate myself to. I knew that between 2016 and 2020, my area, my community, there would be 13 very important seats that would be up for election. Here in 2020, overlapping into my district, I have 2 county commission seats, soon to be 3. I have 2 school board seats, and because of the way that the district lines are drawn for Florida House, everything from Dadeland to Key West, which is about a 5-hour drive from end to end, it's up for re-election right now. So our South Dade community will look very different. It's about time, like Nancy said, that we have representation that truly represents the people who live here. In a district of almost 200,000 people, 40% of that is Black, 53% identify as Hispanic or immigrant from the Caribbean, and 56% of the people here are women. And my election would mean me becoming the first Black woman to ever hold this seat, second person of color, and second woman ever to hold this seat. There's simply too much to lose in this election. So I thank you guys for bringing me on. I thank you for having this platform that people may understand just truly just how important it is for them to understand the power that they hold in voting.
Jessica, that's historic. I mean, what you explained about how the entire community is going to be looking different between August and November, and beyond that is really, really prolific. I think people have to pay close attention to the fact that so much is at stake, not just presidential elections. And that's what we try to focus on it with politicking, is it's not enough to know who's running for president if you're not focused on the legislators that are making policy and making change in your backyard. So thank you for saying that. I'll ask you, what's your current community and civic involvement?
So right now, I just finished my second term as the Democratic Precinct Council person for, I've been serving for the past 6 years. In addition to that, I've been writing policy for several years. I've been an international disaster relief administrator, working directly with the presidency, with the Office of the President in Haiti, the Office of the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister for Antigua and Barbuda, working directly with the Premier of Anguilla. I have written policy and served as a trainer for Department of Department of State. I was reading an article, Department of Homeland, Department of State. I have worked with YALI, President Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative, as well too as a mentor and also as a guide in International Visitors Bureau here in Miami-Dade County. I've been mostly grassroots behind the scenes, and I guess starting from about the time I got into high school, I used to skip school and go to commission meetings to find out what's going on. So
that's amazing. That is so dope. I love that you mentioned YALI. I actually was a Fulbright fellow, and I did a lot of work closely with YALI. I did my Fulbright in Senegal, and they were some of the most brilliant young minds I've met, and I was so humbled just to be at the table with them. And they taught me so much, not only about the continent, but about myself. So that was just incredible. And so I'm glad I'm also with you on the Department of State and YALI. And so that's really, really awesome, Jessica. And so I see that you're really passionate about international affairs, but what other issues do you seek to advance through your office or position?
So my district, we have a very unique and special opportunity with this election to make sure that we enact laws that make sense for the people here. We have 3 historically Black neighborhoods in our community: Richmond Heights, Goose, and Perrine. Perrine actually having its own baseball team. Goose used to have its own holidays and parades. And Richmond Heights was a city that was created, a community that was created for Black veterans after World War II. So when you look at that, we also have 3 CRAs. For those who don't know how CRAs work, they really allow allow like hands and feet for the community without directly having to involve the government. So they're established by the state, and the money comes from TIF. It comes from money that you pay on your taxes for your home. It goes into this pot that's supposed to stimulate economic development, make sure they jumpstart businesses who need any kind of support or resources, technical or financial resources, in addition to addressing blight in the community and helping to create true pathways to home ownership. They really have a lot of freedom, but right now in our community, in District 117, we have the blessing of having 3. When we know places like Coconut Grove and Miami are fighting to just get 1, we have 3. And yet we have not been able to really maximize to the capacity what they're designed for because of preemption that's at the state level. So if you were to come to my house, you would see on the wall, I have 3 very specific targets, 4, but 3 very specific targets in Tallahassee. Preemption that doesn't allow us to use our CRA correctly, anti-gentrification legislation, or for the sake of being like, I guess, softening the blow,
You
housing
don't have
protection.
to soften it.
It's housing protection language, where this was something I actually submitted to several elected officials for the past 5 years, and none of them thought to even kind of like bring it through, where depending on how long a home has been in your family, Sister May, who's been in the house for 50 years, goes to the same place, don't have her grandbabies in the house who can't read her information, she doesn't have to worry about losing her home, because should anything happen, we will enact responsible development laws. It will force the hand of responsible development. So that way it gives them a longer period to kind of cure whatever's going on in their home. In addition to making sure that there's resources to address our crime rate that comes at as like the source of it or the root of it is a little bit different than most areas. So we have gentrification crime rate, y'all. So what we have, because we are by far one of the most affordable places in the county now, since they've pushed out so many people out of the Grove, pushed out so many people in Overtown, Liberty City, Scotts Projects, the Beams, all of these places, we put them all in one zip code and hope that they were gonna kumbaya together. And that has not been the case. So you have people who have beef that's like generational beef. It has nothing to do with the 14-year-olds killing each other. It all has to do with their uncle who had an issue with somebody else who lived in a different place, but now they're all sharing a zip code. So making sure that we are creating a brighter future for our kids by intentionally investing in alternatives for them, making sure that STEM, actually, including the arts as well too, and youth entrepreneurship initiatives are something that is no longer a few have the conversation, but everybody's having this conversation. A lot of people always ask me, okay, well, we're in the House is predominantly Republican. How do you hope to get anything passed? And I always say to them, sober language. So whether you're Democrat or Republican, Black or white, rich or poor, everybody wants a brighter future for their family. Everybody wants to make sure that there's housing for their family. They want to see their kids advance. They want safer neighborhoods. And these are all things that we can kind of help solve for ourselves with the right resources. One of my goals in Tallahassee, and truly making sure that our CRAs operate that they should. And then the third very specific target is transparency and accountability with public and affordable housing. South Dade area has kind of sold their lunch to developers, and we've had the highest residential construction in the last 15 years in all of Miami-Dade County, yet we have not had any infrastructure support. Our county commissioners scratch their head every time we ask for transit. They promised us 13 years ago, yet the developers are receiving hundreds of millions of dollars from our state budget, our money that we're giving, part of that $90 billion we're supposed to appropriate as legislators, and they're receiving tax credits by the millions, and yet have not, nobody has said, hey, you know what? Y'all not hurting for money. Let's put some of this money to the side to help build out the infrastructure. It costs $14 in toll for me to go to school every single day when I went to FIU, and that should not be the case.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, we want to keep moving quickly. I mean, you're just actual information resource. Yeah, you're a powerhouse, but I mean, you just have a wealth of knowledge. So thank you.
Jessica, thank you so much. C'est pour me parler en petit créole, oui, parce que toute femme haïtienne ça yo. Wanda, Nancy, Jessica, you guys are really giving it to me. You guys are making me very proud to be Haitian today. Whoosh, them.
Team Haitian.
Yes,
Team
Louis for la
Haitian,
force,
like,
man.
wow, like, I'm rooting for everybody Haitian. This is crazy. Y'all making me very hot. I'm about to take my jacket off. This is
Hold
crazy.
on, let's not do Marlon like that, because Marlon
Everybody
pretty much is
Caribbean,
so
y'all.
in the
No,
community.
Marlon did his thing. I just
Marlon
was
is
like,
Haitian
Man,
too now.
Bookman is
He's by
over here just,
association.
Bookman is over here just listening, you know.
oh, Bakono Haitian, Marlon. Okay,
No, Marlon is
okay.
Haitian by association.
Listen, he
Jamaican,
gave
right?
his
He's
volunteers
Jamaican, right?
rice. He is Haitian.
Okay,
He gave his
all right.
volunteers rice.
Listen, we embrace everyone, but thank you so much, ladies. Marlon, you guys have done excellent, and you're making me have so much fun with this panel. So I'm just gonna switch gears a little bit. We're gonna bring a very, very, very brilliant young woman, Rachel Gilmer, who is currently the co-director of Dream Defenders. Rachel is a Black feminist organizer with over 10 years of experience in advocacy programs, leadership development, research, and writing on issues of racial and social justice. Honestly, I remember hearing Rachel speak at a Dream Defenders meeting, and I was so taken by her truly prolific and truly a gem within the movement. So, Rachel, we're so happy to have you this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here with everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I told them a little bit about your written resume, but tell them about who Rachel as a person is.
Sure. So yeah, thanks again. Really excited to be here. I'm with an organization called the Dream Defenders that was founded in 2012 by young people across the state of Florida after Trayvon Martin was killed. This was right in the days after Trayvon was killed and George Zimmerman hadn't been arrested, and basically young people came together from across the state, planned a huge march from Bethune-Cookman all the way to the Sanford Police Department to demand that George Zimmerman be arrested. Our political agenda is called the Freedom Papers, and it's really a vision for what Florida would look like if it actually invested in people and our needs as opposed to mass incarceration and policing. You know, Florida is really ground zero for some of like the worst policing and incarceration practices in the world. We have the third largest prison system. We have more police murders than almost any other state. Most of our politicians are in bed with the private prison industry. And so we're focused on building political power to change all of this, because we think what communities actually need to stay safe isn't prisons, isn't police, it's things like housing and healthcare and good schools and food and water, just the basic things, that resources that communities need to survive. And I think, you know, like in this moment where people are talking about defunding the police, people are talking about prison abolition, there's lots of people who are like, but what would we do without police? Like, can we really live in a world without police? Can we really live in a world without prisons? And I think part of what like personally brings me into this conversation is like my life is actually like the product of alternatives. I am originally from Oregon. I'm biracial. My dad's Black American, my mom's white, and both my parents were drug addicts. And my mom, when I was 4 years old, got recruited to this county program to help people with addiction, where she got connected for free to a social worker every day, to methadone treatments to help her with her addiction, to someone who would just sit and talk with her about like why she was addicted in the first place and like the trauma and the root causes and all the things that led there. And so like I am truly the product of an alternative, and my mom got help for what millions of people have spent their lives in prison for. And so when people say there is no alternative, there is an alternative, and there's people in this country that are getting access to it, and we need to fight and demand more, and Florida can be a state that actually meets people's needs and does something different.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, Rachel, you talk a lot about the fact that we can actually conceptualize a world in which there's no prisons. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with the idea of abolition, but I love the fact that you're adamant about the fact that this can work. Tell us more about prison divestment, how we can achieve this state, because I think a lot of people think about it in concept, but don't think that it would work practically in theory. And so what would that actually look like if Florida, for example, started taking actual steps towards divesting away from the mass carceral system that we currently see?
Yeah. So right now in Miami-Dade County, there's a proposal on the table to put $400 million towards a new jail. Right now, Miami has the 8th largest jail system in the country. Most of the people inside our jail have not even been convicted of a crime. They are simply there because they cannot pay their bail. So 2 people are in jail, 1 person, neither have been convicted, but 1 person can afford their bail. So they get out, and the other person can't afford their bail. So they spend, months, sometimes years in jail, while meanwhile they're losing they might lose their kids, they might lose their home, they might lose their job, literally just waiting for their trial. And so this is like literally a system that is built on exploitation of poor people. And an alternative, I think that there are other things that our county needs besides a $400 million jail. I think those resources, I don't think there's like one alternative to prison, but I think if people have their basic needs met, it goes a long way to actually ensure there isn't conflict in our communities. If people have access to housing, have access to food, have access to healthcare. So Dream Defenders really has a vision around people's basic needs met. And right now there's a proposal in our county to spend millions of dollars building another jail, and we don't need that. I think the other sort of big opportunity that's on the table with this election is that, Florida right now, all across the state, the political actor that has the most power over our criminal legal system, state attorneys, are up for re-election. This person has a lot of power, but people usually can't name who their state attorney is, don't know that they're elected. There's people out in the streets right now demanding that police be accountable, talking about how racist our jail system is, but there's actually somebody in power who makes all sorts of decisions, whether or not police are actually held accountable, whether or not, people are charged, children are charged as adults, whether or not somebody sits in jail because they can't afford their bail. So if you have been to a protest, if you care about what is happening to Black people in our criminal justice system, criminal injustice system, you need to pay attention to this race because this person has complete power to do something totally different. In Miami, our state attorney, Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, has been in power for 27 years. She's only the 3rd state attorney in Miami-Dade history. She's only been challenged a couple of times. She's currently being challenged by someone named Melba Pearson. She's never convicted a police officer. She's never brought charges to a police officer for a police killing. She has, under her leadership, Black people are sentenced at receive longer sentences, higher bonds, are more likely to be arrested for the same crimes. So Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, there's an actual opportunity to unseat her, and Melba Pearson is running on an agenda that says she will cut the jail population by 50%. She will get rid of things like money bail. She'll start charging kids as an adult. So this will go a long way in terms of that real vision for decarceration and alternatives. So just like, if you've been to a protest, I really encourage, if you care about these issues, I really encourage you to pay attention to this race because it has huge influence over our daily lives. And too often the state attorney just operates completely in the shadows and people don't know how much power they have and that there actually is an opportunity to elect somebody who would do the job differently.
Thank you for saying that, Rachel. I actually want to give a shout out to Joe Kimmick, who Jordan interviewed on Tuesday, I believe, who's running for Broward County State Attorney. And y'all have to pay attention. I mean, the things that they're doing in South Florida are insidious. This man was a victim of a hate crime because he has a Black wife. And these are things that really, I think the South Florida community has to pay more attention to. In terms of figuring out really who's going to put policy forth that represents what your views are. Like in the Miami race, Joe's race also, the person has been in power for over 20 years. So we have to make sure that we're not just letting state attorneys fly under the radar, like Rachel mentioned. We have to hold them accountable for their actions, and especially in these critical times where we're currently undergoing a racial crisis in this country. So we all need to pay attention. Please look up the names that she mentioned. We actually have graphics on both candidates that are running for Miami-Dade County State Attorney on Politicking's page. We actually shared them with Baller Alert. So whether you check them out at Baller Alert or Politicking, check them out, make a decision that suits you, and really make sure that you're paying attention not only at the top, but at the bottom of the ballot as well.
And Cooney, I'd like to add one quick thing, and obviously we'll give people the opportunity to do this certainly during the latter portion of the program. But for candidates, you know, elections are not cheap, nor are they, you know, any less taxing now than they would be if we were all on foot and not in a pandemic. So please let people know how they can contribute to you.
Yeah, guys, please drop them down in the chat. And when we open for questions and answers, you guys can state them actually vocally as well. But Jordan, that's a great point. And while you're donating to them, you can also donate to Politicking, our GoFundMe link. I know somebody's going to drop it for me right now.
I've been dropping it, yes.
Yes, so we're going to make that happen as well. But thank you so much for that, Rachel. What you guys are doing within the Dream Defenders is truly prolific. Shout out to you. Shout out to Jonelle. I went to high school with her. And I'm just so inspired by y'all's work. So thank you so much for contributing to our community in that way. Billy Corbin is up next. And I don't even think Billy needs an introduction, but I'll give you guys a short one. Billy is an American documentary filmmaker. He's the co-founder of a Miami-based studio called Raconteur. And you guys might know him better for his films Cocaine Cowboys, Dogfight, and ESPN's 30 for 30, The U and the U Part 2. That is the University of Miami. So pay attention. Billy Corbin's coming to the stage right now. Billy, what's up?
How you doing? Thanks so much for having me. I'm very flattered to be here, and I feel uniquely unqualified in such esteemed company.
Billy, we love your perspective, and I think you have been giving back to the South Florida community for years, so it's time that we pull you into the conversation as well. And everybody on this panel does something different, but is uniquely good at it, and that's why we wanted y'all to be a part today. And so tell me what you currently do. What is your current community or civic involvement?
Other than Twitter? Other than being like a full-time troll, you mean?
Yes. Well, that's part of it. You can tell them about that too.
Well, listen, I've been very blessed with a wonderful career, thanks to some very supportive parents and family and friends, thanks to a very supportive South Florida community. And I think you grow up in Florida and you learn quick that you don't get to pick your parents. You're born into this world, you kind of look around, get a lay of the land, and you play the hand you're dealt. And a lot of people, particularly in this community, I'm a native Floridian and a lifelong Miamian. A lot of people have a lot of adversity to overcome in this community. And I often say that I don't look at Miami as a melting pot. I think we're far more akin to a TV dinner where sometimes the peas fall over into the mashed potatoes, because we always seem to find a way to self-segregate. How else to explain 34 municipalities in Miami-Dade? We have 34 different mayors, nearly 34 different police departments. I used to drive to work, depending on which route I take, 20-minute drive with no traffic. I can be pulled over by any one of 5 or 6 different police departments, or all of them. Depending. It's just, and what this decentralization of responsibility has done is created a diffusion of it, meaning you have your local government pointing to your county government, and your county government pointing to your state government pointing to the feds, and the feds pointing back to the local. And nobody, it turns out, is responsible for anything. I mean, the original vision of Miami-Dade's municipalities and incorporated areas was to create more localized government and more accountability and transparency. What it has actually done is create 34 new opportunities for them to steal from us, is what it has actually done. And you have these fiefdoms, and you have these lobbyists, and you have these political dynasties and political crime families who install themselves into these places and just rip everybody off. And they're allowed to do it. And we can't even, as a county, foreclose on them. The voters themselves must vote to unincorporate, unfortunately. And so, I mean, Miami is just like Game of Thrones in paradise with iguanas instead of dragons, I think, is what's going on down here. And and so what I try to do with the platform that I've been lucky enough to sort of build locally is I hopefully try to give a voice to people who feel that they don't participate in the system. but do and should realize that whether it's the democratization of social media, of apps like politicking, of voting, that you do have a say and you do have power. And people hit me up all the time, multiple times a day, talking about their personal struggles, injustices that are coming to their attention that they want amplified. And I do my best to use my platform to amplify those voices. I mean, Miami's a unique place, man. I think it's an understatement. And Miami is important to the rest of the world because the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow. And if you want to know what challenges we'll face or calamities will befall us as a nation in the years to come, you need only look at what's going on down here in South Florida. It's a very important place, and we have a unique dynamic, and it's turning, it's third world, and it's becoming more third world every day in terms of income disparity, in terms of policing, in terms of government corruption and lack of accountability. And you have a unique place here because we have a minority majority or a majority minority community here in Miami-Dade. And so the shameful tradition of American cities is that we treat African Americans as second-class citizens. Not true in Miami. They are treated third-class citizens in Miami. And Haitians even under that. That's just how it goes. Believe it or not, I'm a minority in Miami. So there's Cuban Americans, there's the Anglos. I think we're the only American city that calls white people Anglos, okay?
Absolutely.
Then you have African Americans and Haitians. So you're talking about a significant part of our community that is not underserved. They are unserved. Entirely unserved. They may have an opportunity, for example, to get a district seat like Marlon in D9, you know, but for the most part, countywide races like the one that Melba Pearson is running, that is an uphill battle for a woman of color in Miami-Dade County, and that is not how it should be, or it's not how it should be anymore. And so that's what I try to do with my platform. I try to, give people an opportunity to be heard, have their stories heard, have their voices heard. And that's what I'm doing here.
Billy, that was phenomenal. And honestly, to me, you being aware of your privilege, you being aware of your platform and using that to allow other people to hear the stories of those that have been untold. Because I think that's what filmmaking is, right? Is sharing stories. It's so tremendous and it's so needed within our communities. So thank you for that. My question to you, Billy, is you've had some very successful films, some very successful art come out, and you could focus your art anywhere. Why have you continued to focus on telling stories out of Miami and Florida? Why is Florida and Miami so important to you? Why do you keep telling our stories?
Why not? First of all, this is my town. Like I said, I'm a native Floridian. I'm a lifelong Miamian. I made a promise to myself a long time ago to try to leave behind a better Florida than the one I was born into. And that is becoming progressively harder, I think, every day as Florida itself is decaying and being poisoned, literally poisoned, as evidenced by the shores of Biscayne Bay. And we need to vote better. That's how we fix it. That's the short answer, is vote better. That's how we do it. But the deep, dark secret of what I do is that the worse you vote, the more work I get. Because the more screwed up Miami is, the more
better films you can make.
The crazier the characters, the more stories I have to tell, okay, of what a broken city and upside down place this is. So, you want to enrich me, don't vote for Marlon. Don't vote for Daniella Levine Cava. Okay, that's how you do it, because you'll just have a more screwed up Miami-Dade County. So that's sort of the dichotomy in my existence is, the better things are here, the less work I have to do. But don't worry about me. I'll be okay. What I'm telling you is vote for Marlon Hill, vote for Daniella Levine Cava, vote for Melba Pearson, because I want to be a better Miami-Dade. There's plenty of stories from way back when that I can tell about how backwards and upside down Miami used to be. What I want to start doing is ending them more hopefully. I don't want to end my documentary about the damage that Alex Pinellas did to Miami-Dade County with a title card that says, and now Alex Pinellas is the mayor of Miami-Dade again. We don't need to be going backwards. We need to be moving forwards. And the way you move forwards is to vote better. Let me tell you about Marlon Hill is the kind of guy, these people, you have men and women like this all over your life that you've grown up with, where you're like, man, you should run for office. I wish you'd run for office. You should run for office someday. So I feel like people have been telling Marlon that forever, and he's finally done it. I'm working on a documentary now. I can't talk about it, unfortunately, but I'm looking at footage from 20 years ago. And there's a very significant political event in history that happened 20 years ago. And I'm telling you, even though Marlon Hill looks like he's 22 years old right now, there's Marlon 20 years ago right there in the middle of this event. And I'm like, holy crap, I hit him up. I'm like, is that you sitting right back? And he's like, yeah, that was me. So Marlon's always been there. Marlon's always been involved. And I'm happy to see him, you know, finally running. Miami is a 21st century place. We have 21st century problems. We have all the 21st century problems. Let's be real about it. And we have 20th century leaders. And I don't just mean that they have a mentality of the 20th century. I mean, it's the same friggin' people. I'm with the same last names, okay, who have been feeding at the public trough for multiple generations. And it's time to reboot and refresh, okay? We have leaders with warped priorities and perverse incentives. They measure progress by the number of construction cranes that they can count on the horizon and the amount of millions and billions of our dollars that they could give away to millionaire and billionaire developers and sports team owners. Those aren't priorities. And that is not how you have a city of the future or a county of the future. The only way to build that is with leaders of the future. And we got to flush the toilet. You know, we got to get rid of I'll say it, the Suarezes, the Hardemans, the Diaz de la Portillas, the Hijo de Putas, the Diaz Balarts, the Regalados, the Barreros, the same names you hear over and over and over again. It's time for a new generation and new blood in Miami. And that's the only way that we're ever gonna grow up.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you.
Billy, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being unapologetically you. And thank you for continuing to carry on that Miami legacy. I honestly, if y'all haven't seen Billy's documentaries, like, y'all might be asleep. But start with Cocaine Cowboys and work your way up. Honestly, he continues to tell Miami stories. He continues to tell Florida stories, and truly is a light within our community. So thank you so much for that, Billy. And one of the leaders that he was talking about is actually next. I have the honor of introducing Daniella Cava, who is running for maybe one of the most important positions as a potential future mayor of Miami-Dade County, and has done tremendous work as a commissioner. And I think everyone on the panel kind of knows of Daniella, but I will let her introduce herself. Daniella, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, I'm really in awe of this group. And I feel like, okay, I've arrived. I'm part of this little special group of people that is selected by the progressive young voice of Miami. So I just want to say I feel very, very privileged to be with you tonight and to follow upon Billy Corbin, who, you know, last time we've been together a few times, not just on social media. And one time was when it was a comedic show, and someone was supposed to be making fun of me, and Billy said he couldn't find anything interesting to make fun of me about.
So you weren't a good roast subject, I
was
guess.
Like really heartbroken. But anyway, now for a little comic relief, if anybody does want to see how to make fun of me, there's a wonderful column that was written by a friend of mine, Justin Wales, who writes The Plantain. And he did write some, you know, not very nice things about my wardrobe. So if you want to read a little bit poking fun of me, that's it. But you know, I'm really like an almost 65er, you know, kind of 16 years at heart, because this activism is bringing me back to the days when I was protesting the Vietnam War and riding the bus to DC, and we had the first Earth Day and all of that. And I just, you know, first when COVID happened, this is a little bit rambling, but first when COVID happened, you know, I was depressed, kind of like, oh my God, you know, this is the hand that was dealt us, and how is that, you know, how are we going to deal with that? I mean, we have challenges enough. Now we have to worry about a pandemic and people dying and our economy collapsing, you know. And then we had George Floyd murdered, and you know, obviously the world, I mean, what was so incredible about it, not just in this country, but the whole world had this opportunity to to be liberated and think about the changes that needed to happen. And so it gradually dawned on me that this was just the recipe for my ascendancy to the mayor's office, because I always view these challenges as the opportunities to make the changes that are needed. And I just really actually, like, November might be too late. Like, I got to get in there because, you know, we got to strike while the iron is hot. We've got to really move in and address the disparities that are so apparent through these two cataclysmic, you know, world events. And I've really been doing that all my life. So I'm a lawyer and a social worker. I moved to Miami-Dade County 40 years ago. It took me 10 years to like the place. And
where'd you move from?
At the time I was in graduate school in New York City, but actually I'm a New York person. I mean, I was born in the New York area. I lived overseas. I lived in Brazil, Chile, Canada, London, Puerto Rico, Chicago, and
Wow.
Atlanta, which is where I met my future husband. And then I came down here to be with him, and it was supposed to be temporary. So his father was diagnosed with cancer. We never left. And, you know, 2 children and 2 grandchildren in DC later. And like, I am Miami. I'm like the biggest booster that you could find. And not because it's boring and staid and things are easy, but because it's challenging and dynamic, and because we are what America will look like Billy said. I mean, to me, this is like just so exciting that we have the opportunity to really invent the future. And so, of course, I want to get it right. So, you know, I was running nonprofit organizations. I ran the foster care system, the guardian ad litem program. I started, you know, many nonprofit organizations. And then I started the emanation of my soul was the Human Services Coalition, now Catalyst Miami. So proud of that organization. And, you know, all this time serving throughout Miami-Dade County. Started at Northside with legal services and basically worked all around the county working on economic opportunity, social justice issues. So it was time to step into office. You know, all the progressive groups supported me. We did a big upset, got rid of a bad incumbent. And 6 years I've been, I think, making progress. But progress is limited. I have to stay in my lane, and very frustrating to me. You know, a lot of ward politics. And now is the time, you know, really this is the opportunity to really change things. So, you know, I feel again like we're talking about change makers, and we're talking about a group that came together because a couple of you wanted to engage people in being the change. So, you know, that's how I'll be. You know, people ask me, well, what'll be different when you're mayor? And first I say everything, but I'm going to change culture. I'm going to change culture in County Hall. You know, government is here to serve the people. People pay their taxes. They elect people. They expect good service. They expect accountability. They expect, you know, to have their needs addressed. They don't expect people to go off and get rich with their money, or to be ignored and treated as irrelevant. And I see, look, I was on the other side of the dais for many years, and I was, you know, asking government for things, and now I had to go inside to change culture. So I'm going to end with this little comment, which is that what is different about me, apart from the fact that I really care, that I really listen, that I'm really honest, that I really don't have any, you know, self-interest in this, and no special pay to play or anything like that, and then I'm an innovator, and that I really want to get these things done, and I have ideas. But what's really different is that I do it collaboratively. So, you know, I can only do it when I'm surrounded by people that are going to be part of the solution with me. You know, I cannot change the direction of the county just by being on the 29th floor. I have to do as I've always done and engage all of the caring, dynamic change makers in the community like you are. So I could go on, and this is not my usual speech, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for including me in tonight's conversation.
Well, fortunately, Daniella, I think that you have some change makers on the panel with you tonight, and I think that you guys are definitely going to change the face of Miami together. We have a couple more minutes, so I want to ask you, how are we going to get it right? What are 1 or 2 tangible ways in which we want to see change within the county of Miami-Dade? I think there's so much to be said, but if you could just name 1 or 2 what would be the first areas that you focus on?
Well, I did say culture. That is a little amorphous, but I do think that really, really matters because you all have to be pulling, you know, it's 28,000 people. Not everybody's going to go in the right direction, but you need to create a culture of being responsive, a culture of listening, learning, and improving things, a constant improvement. Another thing is we have to be accountable. We have to measure what we're doing. We have to say, here are our goals that were informed by people's priorities. And then we have to report, how are we doing? Right? Constantly making course corrections. So we've got to have real evaluation, office, and metrics and accountability. We also need to be fact-based. And in this case, we have to be we have to have good medical information, right? Because, you know, our public health system is basically non-existent for dealing with this pandemic. And even once there's a vaccine and all that, there'll be more health challenges. And not to mention, we don't have to just deal with disease, we could deal with health. I mean, imagine if we actually had a whole health agenda. So I'm gonna bring a chief medical officer. Then we're gonna do equity and inclusion, because that's part of measuring accountability. If we're not lifting up communities and we're just running roughshod over them, you know, we have to really monitor, are the contracts being given? Are the jobs being given? Are the, you know, are we dealing with the racism in our departments? You know, we have to know about it. We have to address it. We have to report about it. And then I'll just mention one other, because I could go on, which is economy. We are like rudderless when it comes to economic development in the county. We do not have an economic development staff. It's very haphazard. We need to be very deliberate about a pipeline for jobs to prevent, for example, Black flight, to make sure that our kids perceive a pathway to a brighter future for apprenticeships and internships and jobs. We need to have innovation fund dollars, coupled private sector and public sector together. We need to mentor our small businesses and take them by the hand and let them grow with our support, our back office support, our marketing support, big brother sister type relationships. So those are some of the things that I think are very concrete that I plan to address.
Thank you so much.
Daniella.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Cava. You have been a light. You're continuing to work for the city and for the county. And so we thank you for that and wish you the best of luck on the elections that are upcoming. And you guys, I'm sure you guys will drop some information in the chat, websites, information where you guys can find Commissioner Cava. And so we have one last speaker before we open for Q&A, because I know some people have questions, and you guys can start formulating those questions, because I know you guys, I know there's some thinkers in the chat. I saw y'all. And so this young lady has become a quick friend of mine, but is most commonly known as YesJulz, as a social media personality, as an entrepreneur, and really a boss. Julz has continued to revolutionize social media as we know it, and has really brought Miami to the forefront of that. So Julz, I want to give you the floor. Tell them a little bit about who you are and how did you get to be YesJulz? How did we get from Julieanna to YesJulz?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for putting this together and just for being so passionate about your platform, Politicking the App. And I think, you know, for so long, a lot of us, me and Billy, have had many conversations about how it's really imperative that this information be delivered in a way that is, you know, not only digestible, but alluring for our audience. As we know, we're constantly being inundated with content, right? And so that's what it's so incredible what Billy's doing in his work and really getting people to pay attention through his visuals and his storytelling. And then with you guys, you know, women providing such an amazing platform. I'm really glad that we came to meet each other. And for everyone else on the call, I feel honored to be on this Zoom. I'm inspired by every single person who spoke today. You know, I really wanted to do this because I saw the mayoral candidate forum that was put on by, I believe, the Miami Herald at the top of quarantine, and I was really impressed with the concept of, or with the idea that we had this kind of access, right? So, yeah. Of course, if you're not tuned in politically, you might it's impossible to ask somebody who's a mayoral candidate a question about what it is that they're doing, especially in a time like this when we're not having these, you know, community gatherings where there's open floor to speak. And so this Zoom was so great, and I just felt like, man, it's a shame that there's not more people that I know in here, because we have these conversations in our living rooms, protests, at jam sessions all the time, and we want to be a part of the conversation. And one thing I say is that, and this is I take full responsibility for this, because this is where my expertise are, but I'm trying to build an app that makes me the next Zuckerberg. And so there's like a big thing happening in the tech space right now. And I'm trying to strike while the iron's hot. And so I've been out here in LA and didn't realize that there was a like a registration with a passcode for this thing. Next time, I wide open, share the Zoom code, share the passcode, because we want everyone in here. Like even if sign up for the app, right? Because, you know, maybe we draw them in with this kind of content and let them know that there will be continuing conversations on the app. So I'd love to, you know, we'll repurpose this stuff and get it out to the masses. But shout out to all the people that did register and are in here, those 23 people. Thank you for attending. And to answer your question, fine. My name is JulZ. You know, I was adopted when I was 9 years old, and by a family living in Boston who used to live in Miami. The woman who adopted me was my supervisor at a children's home, Little Rascals, or a program that with kids that were at risk to go to after school. And so I am a product of the Miami and South Florida foster care system. My sister Nicole is also a product of that system, and so there's a funny connection, a way that Billy I ended up meeting, because Billy's partner in his company happens to be my sister's birth. So there's a weird connection there. And I moved back to Miami after being adopted and moving to, you know, my mom worked for Delta. We moved back to Tampa after 9/11, and cause she got transferred. And once it was time to go to after college, once it was time to hit real life and start my career, I decided I wanted to go back home. And that was because I was doing events and promotions and marketing, and kind of had reached my capacity in Tampa and thought that Miami would be the next big place that I'd love to do that. Of course, there was this huge club opening at the time that a lot of hype about, Live nightclub at the historical Fontainebleau that I'd never seen the inside of. And so I made it to Miami with like $50 in my pocket, with, you know, plans to stay at somebody on my birth side of the family's house and get to know them a little bit and build my career. I had very different views from out of that family, and I was shocked to find that they were very close-minded in terms of like race. Very Italian aunt that I had, and you know, I realized quickly that these weren't the people for me. So, you know, I went on my own and started, you know, working as a waitress, etc. Was lucky enough to be the waitress for some pretty big people in Miami at the time. Maverick Carter and LeBron James used to go to Segafredo all the time. I became their waitress. Asked, please help me get a job at Lit. I've been trying for 8 months and couldn't get there. And so they kept their word and helped me. And, you know, I kind of just built my way up from there, decided that I really wanted to incorporate hip hop in the programming that were taking place. And at the time it was mainly house music and techno music on the beach, and it was really segregated in a sense, with the exception of some amazing parties like Sundays and the love we have on Sundays as well. But you know, it was very, if I'm being candid, I was a hostess for this place, and I was told to invite my friends and demographic on Sundays, but I couldn't let them in on any other day.
Wow.
Right. And so there was, okay, so there was a, you know, there was a lot of issues that I had with that. And I really wanted to change that reality. And so, I'm sorry, somebody keeps calling me. Let me just,
it's okay.
Please stop doing that. I'm on a Zoom, babe. Please tell them to call the room. Thank you. So yeah, so when that, you know, and even just, I mean, really minuscule things like women that work in the hospitality industry on South Beach, at one point, you know, we were required to wear a heel with a certain amount of inches. We had to wear dresses that were a certain length that I wasn't really comfortable with at the time. Obviously have no issue with that these days, but you know, that was, sorry. Yes, she's fine. And anyone else that wants to come up is fine. You can send them up. Thank you so much. So, you know, so I really kind of went on a mission to, you know, just find, to see if I could become a promoter or a person that's throwing parties in these spaces, hiring the DJs that I believed in and the acts that I believed in, and wasn't really able to do that there at that place. So I started working at the Delano, ended up, you know, working my way up there. And I feel like, you know, we really kind of push the boundaries a little bit as women working in this space. A little funny story, like I said that I broke my toe, got a doctor's note so that I could wear sneakers with my dresses at work. And eventually, after 3 months of me having a Band-Aid on my toe, Grumman obviously knew that my foot wasn't broken anymore, but sales had gone up because I was in a better mood when I was hosting clients downstairs and running around and just way better. So, you know, we were able to kind of, in my own little way, I've been trying to make the change that I want to see for these little things. And then as I got older, obviously my priorities shifted, and it wasn't wearing sneakers at work that was important to me anymore, but more so getting back in touch with, okay, my origin story and how my mother was such an integral part of my becoming the woman that I am today. And with that being the case, you know, really just dissecting that and like, okay, why is it that I ended up becoming a productive member of society? Well, it's because my mom allotted me the tools and nurture necessary so that I could end up becoming somebody who would make a difference instead of becoming somebody who was like we were speaking about earlier, a liability. And so I love the concept of liability versus assets, and really, you know, taking that into consideration. Why is it that we're so passionate about building this $400 million jail, but we really could care less about the funding being cut in programming in schools, and the fact that there has been funding cut for places like Christie's house, when sex trafficking is obviously such a huge issue in our state, right? So it's like, okay, we want to go ahead and reprimand and punish and rehabilitate more than we want to prepare and invest in our youth and communities. And that's why I'm so honored to be here on the call with Daniella, because I really love everything that she suggested. You know, there's lots of conversations going on right now. People are protesting. They want the abolishment of the system. They want the abolishment of the police. And there's these heated debates going on. Like, what do you mean to abolish the police? What do you mean? And Dream Defenders has done such an incredible job of really honing in on the messaging of this and making sure that people understand what it is that we mean when we say abolish the police. And this is another reason why I respect Daniella so much, is she's not afraid to say, hey, we have a flawed medical, we need a real expert. There is no existing, I took notes on this. What was it that you said? You said that you wanted to bring in a chief medical officer. And for you to say that our health system is non-existent, like, thank you. We need somebody in the government, in local office, who's going to say these things and not just act like it's not our reality. You know, we need somebody who's going to say, hey, I'm not saying do away with our system immediately right now, but what I am saying is that the current system we have does not work, and we need to change this. And how we're going to change this is by thinking in innovative ways. Maybe we do not need to pay with our tax dollars for a policeman at a park who's just going to be more intimidating to our youth than of assistance, right? Because we know that right now tensions are high in our country. So why would we even think to suggest that? Why wouldn't we look at what's not working and suggest, like Daniella said, perhaps a social worker, perhaps a therapist, perhaps a high school gym coach on the weekends? Let's give him the opportunity to make some extra money. And, you know, I'm just learning, I'm just getting in this space. And the more that I watch of Billy's content that he puts out, and the more I see Daniella speak, and the more I tune into what the Dream Defenders are doing, the more I learn that I just don't know anything, honestly. And it's kind of overwhelming at times. And I will candidly say that, you know, I haven't learned balance in my life as an individual. So I'm kind of all in or all out. So I've been like, there was a time in the beginning of this where I was so inundated with it that I couldn't even answer emails or focus on any client projects or anything, because I was like, this is a major problem happening. And like, I have to dedicate myself to making sure that I'm like screaming from the mountaintops about it. Then I became so emotionally exhausted by that because I just haven't figured out that magic formula for myself on how to, you know, have balance, that I kind of tuned out a little bit. And I've seen a lot of my friends doing this as well. And you can see it in our messaging on social media. We'll be really, really into it. And then we tune out for a second and then we tune back in.
It's activist fatigue.
It's activist fatigue. And I'm just realizing this for the first time. And I understand that it's not okay. I'm not saying it's okay, because you know what? People have been fighting this fight for a really long time. And it's not okay for somebody like myself to, you know, say I'm an ally and want to act as an ally and then think it's okay to take a break. You know, so I understand that and am working to find that balance for myself. But, you know, I'm always having the conversations. I'm always in my way. If I'm not on this Zoom call, I'm at the pool upstairs with my friends in the music industry, speaking to them about how it's important that they speak to their audience about what's going on with their local elections. And so I think, you know, the number one thing that I love about politicking and the number one reason why I really wanted to be a part of a conversation like this and host something like this was to show people that there is no like face to politics. There is no, I mean, if our president hasn't shown us that, at least, right? There is no right or wrong way or right or wrong time to jump into the conversation. It is, yes, overwhelming, but we have to do it. And yes, there's a lot of questionable things going on right now. I mean, the conspiracy theories and the conversations are exhausting, right? So it's easy to tune out. But the important thing to notice is that we have made change. We have at first people were saying, what is the point in protesting? You know, people feel exhausted, but I was like, well, the point is that women still have their right to choose in some states. The point is that people have been arrested for crimes that they have committed. The point is that laws are changing right in front of our eyes. We are the people that we have been waiting for. And so, you know, I, with my platform, am just praying for strength and guidance to just utilize the voice that I have and the platform that I have and speak to this audience that I'm blessed to have tuned in, and just hope that they get the message and that we can really hopefully be the change that, you know, all these people have been fighting for generations. I mean, Billy's been making films for who knows how long. Every time I go on Twitter, Billy is again making me aware of something else that I didn't know was going on in my own backyard. I had no idea who Kathy Rundle was. And I mean, this film that you made with Dr. Uncle Luke and him, you know, interviewing her and her saying that she had no knowledge or that she'd never seen the tape. And then we literally have on film this woman looking at a tape of her police force committing this crime that she said she never had evidence of. So it's like, at what point do people get ousted out of office? I feel like our constitution is old, our legislation is old, everything is outdated. We're in a digital age. There's new laws that need to be formed. There's old laws that are just out of I can't even find the word right now, but you guys get what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah.
I'll bring it back in here.
I think what you said is poignant though, Jules. I think, first of all, I appreciate your candor. I think it takes a certain type of bravery to admit, hey, I don't know everything. And I don't know everything about how to be a good ally, because a lot of people don't. And a lot of people are scared to admit that, and they're scared to have these conversations. And that is what does a disservice to our communities, is not having these conversations. Not knowing everything is fine. And I think that's why there's resources like Politicking, like the Dream Defenders, like Billy, who puts out these incredible films to educate and inform us. And I think that's the first step. And having these conversations are the first steps. And I think, you know, I really want to extend the conversation and open it up really to the people that have been here diligently listening. If you guys have questions, you guys feel free to drop them now, because this is really where we start to make a change. This is really where we have our community discussions. And as we shift to a digital and virtual world, this is where we are now. This is how we connect interpersonally. And it's important that we do so. So that being said, I'm going to look and see if there are any questions in here or anything like that. If you guys want to drop them, because we have some time left, and I want to make sure you guys get time to connect with everyone you guys have heard from today. Does anyone have any questions they wanted to speak on? Put it in the chat. I'm scrolling up.
Yeah, it looks like people are getting that chat box warmed up. But while they are, I actually have a question for you, Jules, because you absolutely are passionate, and that's pretty inspiring. You know, for those influencers and celebrities who haven't yet gotten engaged and who might feel a little bit hesitant because they don't want to engage in partisan politics and they feel like that's not their place, so to speak. What do you say to them about the importance about embracing at least one cause? Of course, some causes. Why is that so urgent, despite the fact they might not want to seem too political?
I would pose the question to them: who do you remember from history that did not stand for something? I mean, even if that's placating to their egotistical side, but let's be realistic speaking to, right? Like, no one has ever made history or became a household name by just not saying anything when important things happen. As a matter of fact, the most important figures in history have been people who have made advances. When we talk about Muhammad Ali, what's one of the things that we remember about his career? This is a man that fought many fights, right? But one of the number one things that we speak about was his political presence, or lack thereof, right? And so I think, I don't know, like, I think one of the things that was evident in the Michael Jordan documentary was that he didn't speak up his entire career about any of the things that were happening, right? And I think that's what's so powerful and different about LeBron James, is that here we have an athlete who's arguably one of the biggest in the world, and not afraid to take a stand and stand up for his community, no matter what repercussions that might have. And him taking that kind of a stance, he's now leading the way. And look at how powerful we are as a people, with this free press that we have, because now it's almost become a trend to be, it's almost like, oh, you're not in support of the movement? Okay, you know what I mean? And so that is, can be frustrating in some ways, because it is frustrating to see people hopping on and not really being passionate about it. But if we're going to pick and choose our evils, I'd rather be frustrated on that end than frustrated that not enough people are speaking on it or care, right? And so I think that this is the first level of change that we see. But, like, even people who think that our vote doesn't matter, like, okay, well, you spend probably on average 8 to 9 hours a day on your phone, and maybe 6 of those are social media apps. So what matters about you being on social media for 6 hours a day? I'm pretty sure you have an hour to spend. You can still be on Twitter and Instagram while you're in line waiting to vote. And obviously this is an outdated system. How is it even possible that we can get funding and grants and loans from the government in 24 to however many hours, but we can't send our votes in digitally? I mean, it's obvious, the systemic oppression. And it's just, I feel like we're on the verge of I mean, the Dream Defenders, their vision for what our future could possibly look like is a lot closer, I believe, than maybe it was a few years ago. And I think that there's horrible things that happen to bring us to the place that we need to be as a society. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate and absolutely disgusting that the things that have been happening, but I do see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that we need to stay focused. And I think we need to stay focused and make sure that we turn up to the polls.
I have a question for Mayor Levine Cava, if I could.
Yeah.
Commissioner, one asks, as in the home stretch of this primary, in a county as large and diverse as ours, where with the fragmentation, as I discussed, of the local governments, and there are commissions within commissions and mayors within mayors within, it's like this whole inception world where we just, all these governments collapsing into each other nonstop. But people feel like, it's very difficult to feel like that there is any one figure in this county who could represent everyone. And we certainly have never felt that way with any of our leadership, whether it's a district, district commissioners may represent district, mayors may represent a municipality. But in Miami-Dade, I think we've seen a government that is that is set up to steal, not set up to serve in many instances. And we've had this sort of this kind of this Batista form of cronyism and corruption that has ruled the day really since Alex Pinellas, who I think is the architect of modern cronyism in Miami-Dade. So my question is, how do you convincingly say to a county of this size and this cross-section of a population that I am going to be the mayor of all people of Miami-Dade, which is something that has been rare if we've ever had it?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And, you know, it's about vision. It's about crafting something that really appeals to people, where people really feel that reflects their dreams and their desires. And, you know, we've been having a debate in a way because Mayor Jimenez wants to legislate and require that city mayors defer to him. And of course, he treated them like children in this CARES money distribution and really disrespected them. And like, you know, we'll tell you when we'll give you money, not let's talk about what's going on, what role you play to take care of the people in your cities. So, you know, there has to be a lot of relationship repair. And it's not just with the cities, it's with all the different entities that speak. We're very divided because we don't have, you know, I'll just use the example of how many forums. I feel like we've had like 50 campaign forums. And because people don't know about each other's forums, right? There's no group that really coalesces, you know, and speaks. And of course the media market is like that too. So I think, you know, I had an amazing interview with a pastor on her own. She wanted to interview me. So of course I did that. And she asked me what was my favorite quote. And it's a Jim Wallace quote. He's a pastor. And it is, to get to common ground, you have to go to higher ground. And I think about that all the time. What will bring this community together? And that's why tragedies work to bring people together, because, you know, the common enemy is getting through the hurricane or getting through the COVID. But look what we've done with COVID. We've divided and splintered and disregarded. So it's been so mismanaged. This problem has been so mismanaged. So I'm going to have to make up for lost time. I'm going to have to help create that shared vision. And then from there, you know, we could talk about it. Like, what is the thing that we all want to have? And then how do we bring developers together with dream defenders, with police, with, you know, pastors, and all see that, yes, we are going to pull together because we occupy the same space, and the survival of this place and the ability and thriving depends on all of us moving in the same direction. So that's my plan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner. And actually that is an excellent segue into a question we got from the audience, and this is open to any of the panelists. So Hadia, who's a dear friend of mine, says she recently lost her healthy 26-year-old brother to the pandemic. As an advocate for Black families and Haitian Americans, how would you suggest my family seek justice in the current climate? How can we ensure others don't suffer a similar fate in a state like Florida?
I guess I'll answer. It might seem like a very Sunny school version of it, but share a story. Oftentimes, South Florida and Miami-Dade specifically, I don't know if she's in Miami, but we had an opportunity to get ahead of COVID. And like Daniella mentioned, and like you've heard from several of the panelists, our leadership was sloppy. By sharing our stories and making sure that people are aware that your brother could have been my brother and could be somebody else's brother and has been somebody else's aunt, has been the matriarch of our family. I had 9 members of my family test positive for COVID, and we lost the matriarch of our family. And it's senselessly because of negligence and because of a game, excuse the term, of whose balls are bigger, in a sense that our leaders decided to play with our lives. But it starts with sharing your story. It starts with letting people know, hey, these aren't just numbers that somebody's recording as a death. No, this was a brother. This was someone who was loved. This was someone who was cared for, who was here on earth, who is now not here due to negligence and selfishness.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. Yes.
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit too with what Jessica was just saying. A lot of people didn't know, like even for me, I had been like really sick, recovering from COVID the last month. And from me getting sick, I believe I may have passed it on to my father, even though they're saying they may not have been the case. And I had a horrible experience trying to get help from my dad. Like one of the first hospitals I went to, in Broward, is Coral Springs Hospital. And of course I couldn't go in, so dropped him off. He's elderly. He was in there for 3 hours and then was sent home just after taking some blood tests. They didn't even take the COVID test. I had to take him somewhere else to get the test and wait 3-4 more days after he left Coral Springs Hospital. And within like 24 hours of him being there, like he couldn't even breathe. So I had to literally use some of my influence to call around hospitals and anyone that I can talk to that would help me make sure when he comes in, he would actually get assisted and not just put somewhere. So even for me, I've been hearing some of these stories and I feel helpless. Like I'm just getting back on my feet and getting my energy back. But experiencing that and going through that and seeing your family member goes through that is so difficult. I'm so sorry to hear that, you lost, your brother, because that was a very scary moment for us and, in our family. And I think one of the biggest things that Jessica said was about sharing, the story. I felt like that. I was like, for me and my platform, I should tell my dad's story. People should be aware that it took 3 or 4 hospitals before I could actually get help. But then you also feel like, okay, how do you share that story? Because there's so many other people going through the same thing. So where exactly, is it just sharing the story? Is there something else to be done? How many stories do we need to share before someone pays attention? And with everything else going on in the world, you kind of feel like, hearing about her losing her brother, I'm looking at it like, I remember thinking while sharing the story, I like my dad's alive. So it's like, that happened where you're able to get help. There's people actually losing, their family members. So there's this thing of let's share it, but what should be the messaging? How do we get more attention, especially in the Black community, even in the Haitian community? Because I've been hearing a lot of this going on in the Haitian community. People just sitting in hallways. You have the elderly that, there's no translators there. They can't speak. You can't even go in with your family, because you're dropping them off at the front and they're going in. So it's so much there. And I honestly don't have the answer of how to even begin, to find a resolution right now for this.
Thank you for sharing that, Wanda.
The answer is the very essence of politicking, right? We should not be afraid of politics. Politics should be afraid of you. You have to insert your story into the 29th floor. You have to insert your story into the 2nd and the 3rd floor of the county government or your city hall. Like Jessica said, when she was in college, she made it a hobby by going to city hall meetings, right? We live in the Sunshine State where we have Chapter 119, where you can get any information you need to influence policy, right? So politicking is not a spectator sport, right? So we can protest and we can do all those things, and we need to do those things. But we also need to be very smart about politicking where it's necessary to change the policies that are needed so that Sadia doesn't have to lose another family member, because there are several other Sadias that are out there that are losing family members every 83 seconds in America, right? So this is not a game, right? So in the very essence of us recovering from this COVID-19 period, it's going to take us politicking to recover together as a community of self-care. So let's not sleep on this local election on Tuesday, and God forbid, sleep on the election that's coming up on November the 3rd.
And if I could just add briefly, especially in the Haitian community where it's very, we don't really discuss things that happen at home. Anytime somebody dies, yo mangé. That's the response, yo mangé. And that shouldn't be the case. And kind of, I've really adopted, I have really adopted a save our own communities, like be our own solution, save our own self, because nobody's coming to save us. So in sharing your story, it's more than just remembering your brother, but it's also helping someone else who maybe would have gone out without a mask, or maybe wouldn't have taken the extra steps or precaution. They now see somebody, so it becomes that much more real to them. The degrees of separation are less now, so whereas they might not believe, whether they choose to believe it's a hoax, whether they choose to believe the mask doesn't really work, whether they choose to believe, okay, you know what, I can go out to this party because it's just a couple of friends. You heard Wanda say, the guilt of that, I can only imagine if you were to get someone else in your family sick, what that would do to you. So let alone sharing your story does a lot more. And I'm reminded of Edwidge Dundicott, the author, who many people thought like her brother was died in Chrome. And I remember his story was told because she decided to, things were changed in Chrome because she decided to tell her brother's story. So when you see some of these things and you think it may not be relevant, you have no idea the reach. If you look at Wanda's platform, Wanda is not just herself. Wanda is also 130,000 people that follow her. JulZ is also the people that follow her. Billy is also the people that follow him. Daniella, all of these people here, you never know how it's just one more story might be the story that they needed to hear to say, you know what, no, I'm going to behave a little bit more responsibly because there's so many other people's lives who I can now touch and see because someone has shared this with me that I'm now going to govern myself accordingly that way.
Jessica, that was powerful. That was powerful. And
when I have an idea.
Yeah.
So I think that there's like powerful, you know, people in media on Zoom, right? We see that we have Billy, we have Looney and Sweet, we have myself, right? And like Daniella made a great point, we're fragmented. And so maybe there's a union, a media union of sorts, and an impact or influence union. Obviously Dream Defenders has already been doing, you know, everybody's been doing this work. Not me, I'm just new here, but I think that connecting the dots and making sure that there's like a union of people that people can go to when, like, I know, and much like Billy probably knows, I get inundated all the time when things are happening. I think there was like a few protesters that were wrongfully arrested, and there's a girl who comes to my workout class who, you know, she has my phone number because she's my workout class, so she texted me the video. I put it up on my Instagram. The mayor got wind of it, you know, and so these are simple ways that we can, and we've already been doing this on our own, right? But if we do this together, then unfortunately this is just because it used to be the Herald, it used to be you know, our free press, but us people, we have become the free press. And I think that there's too much segmented free press going on, and if we could just get together and get the message out clearly on really important things, maybe there's a way that we can make sure that there's change being implemented more quickly in our community.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jules, this is certainly not going to be the last time I aggregate these brilliant minds. And so we definitely will continue to put together this coalition on behalf of Miami and South Florida as a whole. And Jordan, I'm gonna give it to you before we close out. Did you have any last words? I wanted to kind of end us in a special way, just to kind of commemorate Mario, who's Sahadia's brother. So if you had anything, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd actually like to take a moment of silence for him. And Sahadia, you and your family are absolutely in our prayers. I think this has been an incredible opportunity to hear about what's happening locally. I want to echo Marlon's sentiments and everyone else about the urgency of participating in the upcoming election. I think it's been just incredible to hear from folks who have contributed so much to culture, like Billy and JulZ. And JulZ, you have a novel idea. Like when Cooney said, we're about to be working with you to get that done. I haven't heard of it, and it needs to happen like yesterday. We have fabulous candidates, and while we're not an endorsing entity, we absolutely support causes. We do endorse causes, not candidates, and everyone who we've heard from tonight is absolutely pushing for systemic change. So if there's any resource that we can provide here on out through you, please don't hesitate to let us know. I don't want to hold anyone too late, but I absolutely want to thank you all for your time. I feel like this could be an all-night event because there's so much information in this small panel. I mean, really, you all are just a wealth of information for the area, but really internationally. So I want to thank you all again. I want to remind you all who are listening and our attendees to vote this Tuesday, vote this November. I said this at the beginning of the program, but I know we get really occupied with what's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania. Our life does not begin and end there. It really doesn't. It starts in the county offices. It starts at City Hall. So let's take that seriously, please.
Thank you for that, Jordan. And I'll echo your sentiments by thanking every single person on this call. Mario August was a little brother to me as well. And Sahadia, thank you for sharing your story because, like everyone said, it is just the first of countless stories that we may be hearing as we continue through 2020. And let us take this moment to remember all the people that have fallen in the year 2020. And as we continue on, make sure that these lives were not lost in vain. This was not a nameless case. This was a real person. This was a brother. This was a friend. And we need to commemorate his death by making sure that we are living and being actionable citizens every single day. And that means voting, that means engaging, that means partaking in these types of conversations. And so thank you again for joining. You guys are truly the soul of Miami and South Florida. You guys have made me so proud to be a South Floridian, proud to be a Haitian American, and proud to be a co-founder of Politicking. So I thank you guys. I thank my co-founder, Jordan. And please follow us, whether that's at politickingapp.com, whether it's making a contribution to the GoFundMe. Again, this will not be the last you guys hear of us. And I would like to take the time to wish every single candidate the best of luck, whether your election is on Tuesday or in November. So thank you for joining us and have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. And you
Thank
guys
you.
were great moderators. I think it's so important to have good moderators. And I think this was one of the best forums I've seen in terms of the questions asked and whatnot. So thank you guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Everyone take care.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.